Welcome to another episode of Fill in the Blank. I'm joined by my esteemed companion, Evan.
But are you?
I guess you're joining me. Okay, we're here to talk about Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night. Do you know what Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night is?
No, I do not.
What comes to your mind when I say Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night?
Cherry blossoms at night.
Do you picture what area of the world would this take place in? Cherry blossoms.
Definitely Japan.
Japan?
Yeah.
Is that because a lot of the art you always kind of think of cherry blossoms? They have those.
Well, that's where
trees.
That's where they're native too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Plus, a lot of movies kind of show that.
All our Washington D.C. cherry blossoms are a gift from the land of the rising sun.
That's information I didn't know about. Well, Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night was a 1945 plan developed by Shirō Ishii to wage biological warfare upon civilian population centers in Southern California in the United States during the final months of World War II, using pathogens created by members of Ishii's Unit 731. Now, I've done a podcast on 731 before. They were a torture and human experimentation group. Basically, how Germany had Nazis, well, Japan had Unit 731. And they also had a couple other units that worked in different biomedical fields and testing on human experiments. And each kind of camp was like, you got Unit 731, then there's Unit 100, then there's Unit 1005, and you get all these different ones. I don't know where they come up with these names. Same thing with the operation names, but...
Sounds dandy.
They worked in some pretty crazy things, and a lot of them were forgiven for their war crimes just because we wanted their research. Well, let's get a little bit of background. Unit 731 was specifically created by the Japanese military in Harbin, China, for researching biological and chemical warfare by carrying out human experimentation on people of all ages. During the Second Sino-Japanese War and later World War II, the Japanese had encased bubonic plague, cholera, smallpox, botulism, anthrax, and other diseases into bombs, where they were routinely dropped on Chinese combatants and non-combatants.
Fuck, anthrax might even be scarier than bubonic plague. Jesus.
What is anthrax?
I believe it is a fungus that is extremely deadly. I don't even think we have a antidote to it to this day. I could be wrong about that.
This is in your wheelhouse, kind of, because you like the science aspect and the biological aspect of this stuff.
Kind of.
Remember, you were telling me that on Out of the Blank.
Hold on. As you are continuing this, I'll look up what anthrax is.
There you go. Well, according to the 2002 International Symposium on the Crimes of Bacteriological Warfare, the number of people killed by Imperial Japanese Army germ warfare and human experiments was around 580,000.
Jesus.
According to other sources, tens of thousands and perhaps as many as 400,000 Chinese died of bubonic plague, cholera, anthrax, and other diseases from the use of biological warfare.
So anthrax is a bacterial infection, and it is very rare. But terrorists and throughout history, I guess this included, it's been used for that kind of biological warfare because it is so...
It's very effective.
Yeah.
During the first few months at war with the United States following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan planned to use biological weapons against Americans. During the Philippines campaign in March 1942, the Japanese considered releasing 200 pounds of these plague-carrying fleas, about 150 million insects, in each of 10 separate attacks. But the Americans surrendered at Bataan before the plan was implemented. Around November 1944, Japan launched a total of 9,300 incendiary and anti-personnel bombs carried by balloons, which were designated to rise to 30,000 feet, swept eastward by the jet stream to the continental United States. These killed 6 American civilians near Billy, Oregon, crashed into a farmland in Medford, Oregon, and caused a short circuit in the power line supplying electricity for a nuclear reactor cooling pumps in the Manhattan's Project production facility at the Hanford site in Washington. A backup system restored power. During the Battle of Iwo Jima, Another biological attack was considered against the invading Americans, pilot Shioki Matsumoto. Later recounted how 2 gliders carrying pathogens were supposed to be towed over the battle and released. But the gliders that were supposed to take off from the mainland Japan to Matsumoto's airfield in Pongfang district in preparation for the attack never reached their destination. So if this plan would have went through, we might all be Japanese. We might have lost the war. They were getting ready to send a bomb over to us, and it just seemed like everything was not in their favor. They ended up, retreating or surrendering to us a couple days before the initial plan was set to go off. But like their plans kept getting delayed, like a week or a couple days or something, because wind direction was off. They were just talking about how these balloons carrying some of these bombs were designated for a target, and then the wind blew them off target. So, would you chalk that up to maybe that's an act of God, or do you think that's just like a bunch of events lined up in our favor, and if it seemed like we got the lucky side of the dice?
Well, everything looks like fate or God when you look back, when you look backwards. But going forward, everything's just like random shit happening. So, who could say either way?
Well, the weird thing is about this type of fill in the blank is it's not just factual, but it's also we're speculating, because this is all what would have happened. Like, this is all facts right here that this all happened. But what would have happened if the plan went through? What would we be living like then? Would we be under Japanese rule? Because a lot of this stuff, like I was telling you before, came from Operation Paperclip, where we took a bunch of Nazi scientists, and everyone got different variations of scientists. We got all the rocket research scientists, so that's why we helped our space program. Russia and Japan got chemical and biological scientists, where they were working with better nerve agents, was with Russia. And then, with Unit 731 in Japan, they were dealing with more biological weapons infecting insects. It's like we all got different research departments.
Well, Japan was a member of the Axis powers, right? So, if Japan won, then we probably... See, I don't know exactly how that works, because I don't know if that would mean that we would be under Nazi regime, or if we would
all be under Japanese regime.
I would think, possibly.
Because if Japanese...
I'm not entirely sure how that system worked.
We were fighting Japanese in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, but I know Japan was allied with Germany, Nazi Germany. So, I don't know.
We would be under Japan rule. I'm pretty sure, because Japan is not going to be taking crap from Hitler, I don't think. They're killing China, and they're right beside them. And it's like, you look at, why are you so pissed off at China? Like, they hated China and hate North Korea. They still kind of do to this day. There's a tension there. So it's like, you hate your neighbors so close. They want to be the almighty power. It's a lot like how we look at North Korea. Or not North Korea, is it South Korea with Kim Jong?
It is North Korea. South Korea is a democratic.
Yeah. So, well, with North Korea, it's like they're trying to become an overpower. They want to have all the power. They want to rule the world. It's like the whole reason Unit 731 even thought of doing any of this stuff, like doing any of it human experimentation or working with biological weapons, was because the Geneva Convention passed. The bill saying you can't do this in the 1925, they passed a bill, you can't test with biological warfare on humans. It's against the Geneva Convention's your human ethics code. So you can't do this type of stuff. Do you know about that? Well, Japan saw that, and then 5 years later was like, why don't they want us testing it? That sounds like something we should be doing. And then they thought it was cool and decided to do that, which is, it's ridiculous.
See, if they hit Los Angeles like that, I think the United States as a whole, especially as of that period in time, like 1945, we'd probably be alright, because we have the entire, fucking Midwest, separating, Los Angeles from the rest of the United States. So, we'd probably be able to set up an effective quarantine. But that's still a probably, I think. So there's always that chance where,
Yeah, but we're just finding out they have bubonic weapons. So it's like, would not be...
Even if it was a surprise attack...
You talk about Pearl Harbor being a surprise attack. That would have been a big shot with our pants down.
Yeah. So I think even if it was a total surprise attack, though, it would be like it would only be a matter of setting up quarantine.
And how far would it go?
That's the thing. No, I'm not entirely sure about the logistics.
Maybe it would kill that whole West Coast, and next thing you know, we're down in resources so bad that they can just come over here and invade us easier. Red Dawn happens, and next thing you know, East Coast is taken over.
See, that's because I don't know about. See, most of the United States production is not along the West Coast. So, fuck, I don't know, man.
And most of the population's West Coast. That's the whole idea. Plus, it's closer to Japan.
I thought most of the United States population was in the like
It's in the western area.
Mid-East. Oh,
it's in
shit.
the western area.
Did not know that.
And Japan's right there too.
I'm awful at geography.
Well,
Robbie.
Japan's like it's just that sea. So it's
Yeah,
like,
Japan
that's
is
their-
directly across the Pacific Ocean.
they don't
from
have a lot
us.
of resources, so they're gonna find the one that uses the less possible fuel and can get their missiles to here. It's like North
Yeah.
Korea just was able to hit California with nuclear weapons if they decided to launch them. They could never hit East Coast. So maybe the East Coast might have been a better target, but the West Coast was their only option because it's as far as they could go with these things.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the operational plan. During the last months of war, Ishii was preparing for a long-distance attack on the United States. This operation, codenamed Cherry Blossoms at Night, called for the use of airplanes to spread plague in the Americans' naval base in San Diego at night. The plan was finalized on March 26, 1945. 5 of the new I-400 class long-range submarines were supposed to be sent across the Pacific Ocean, each carrying 3 Achia M6A Syrian aircrafts, loaded with plague-infected fleas. The submarines were to surface and launch the aircraft towards the target, either to drop the plague via balloon bombs or to crash into enemy territory. Either way, the plague would infect the people in the area. The mission was extremely risky for the pilots and submariners, likely a one-way kamikaze mission. A pilot under the command of Isho Kubota recalled the plan in 1998. I was told directly by Shirō Ishii of the kamikaze mission Cherry Blossoms at Night, which was named by Ishii himself. I was a leader of a squad of 17. I understood that the mission was to spread contaminated fleas in the enemy's base and contaminate them with plague. The plan was scheduled to begin on September 22, 1945, but was not realized because it was vetoed by Yorishiro Umuzi, chief of the Army General Staff, and because of the surrender of Japan on August 15, 1945, Arigata Misojiki was just a Unit 731 commander in the Imperial Japanese Navy, and said that only 3 I-400s had been built by August 15th, but estimated that by September 2nd, 2 or 3 or more of them would have been built ahead of schedule had the war gone on. So the whole reason that this plan didn't get launched through was because it's just the constant delays, and that's where we got lucky. Because if that would have happened, there might be a new change in history. What we talk about so many things, speculating on what ifs. That's a big what if.
Well, see, that was their, tipping point, contingency. Both sides were getting to that point, things were starting to, the tension was rising and rising. We're reaching some sort of breaking point, and we hit ours first. That's when we dropped the nuclear bombs. So, we just did ours first.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about you.
I don't think that might be more insidious. It's more it's more scary on a personal level. Like the plague, and oh shit, what if I got the plague, what if my family, but...
This isn't like AIDS. This is you got the plague, yeah, it's a death sentence.
Shit. But then, it's a different kind of fear from the nuclear bomb. Because the nuclear bomb, you don't worry about getting the plague, and if you'll survive or not, you fucking die if a bomb is dropped.
But imagine having to run through your house and run through the town and there's nowhere you can hide from this plague bomb because it's ticks, little fleas, all these little types of things.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're like, oh, I got bit by a flea. You don't even know when you get bit by a flea. They're so small. You know when one's on you after 10 minutes, but one could just hop on you, bite you, then you're next thing you know, you got the plague. You don't even know how you
Fleas
got
are
it.
fucking worse,
You know how
bro.
fast fleas would spread? 150 million of them in a city. How can you contain all that besides putting people in a dome and then hoping you got every single flea? There's no way. If that would have been released, it would have been like you have to try and find every single 150 fleas, and then how long are they going to be breeding and stuff? So next thing you know,
The
you're
thing
done.
is, even if that were the case, I think we would probably quarantine enough to the point where we would develop effective vaccinations.
I just see it
against
hitting all aspects of everybody just
Maybe,
because
dude.
how fast as it
It's-
spreads. You get into an underground bunker while someone.
And that's the thing, because it's not just bubonic plague. They had anthrax. They had all these. They had fucking cocktail
once
of everything.
It's in you, you just really need to find the cure and take the vaccine or something.
Because they'd have to figure out what exactly you had first. You might have several
Can
things.
you imagine this happening now and then trying to get people to take a vaccine with how rejecting people are to vaccines right now? I'd rather die of syphilis. Okay. Well, Japan's biological weapons program was born in the 1930s because Japan's officials were impressed that germ warfare was banned in 1925 under the Geneva Convention. So that's where they started it. These are all facts that I wrote down. Takeo Ueno, 71-year-old former medical worker in Unit 731, said he once saw a 6-foot-high glass jar in which a Western man was pickled in formaldehyde. He was cut in two vertically.
Fuck.
So they had these jars floating around in these little camps the Unit 731 had. So where we talk about the sickness of Unit 731, this is where it really comes into grasp. 731 had containers like these that contained feet, hands, internal organs, all neatly labeled. A veteran of 731 was quoted saying, "The samples were labeled Americans, English, and Frenchmen, but most were Chinese, Koreans, and Mongolians. Most of the jars that was labeled Americans was just body parts." Because they were bringing stuff back when they fought in the war. So if you went to battle and fought a bunch of Americans, you see a blown off foot on the ground, you pick it up, put it in your pocket, you bring it back, throw it in the jar. You know, it's like where we collected ears in the war, or collected something like that. Like people were doing that. People were grabbing trophies. You know, it's a giant honor system here. It's like you want pride and being able to show what you've killed. You know, you kill a deer, you want to bring the corpse and antlers back. You don't want to leave it there and be like, "Oh yeah, I killed a deer. Where's your proof?" Well, you killed an American. Where's his foot? So it's crazy to think, and the only reason there was Chinese, Mongolians, and all those is because at the town that they basically took over in China, that's all that was there as the population was there. There's a lot of Russian people that were escaping their country and coming here, and that's the times you would see Russian dead bodies from these experiments and stuff because they were trying to find a better life, trying to make a new home, and they found it in this part of China. And next thing you know, a unit comes in and starts doing human experimentation on you. You have no idea what you're going into. Same thing with the Nazis. It's just the craziness of biological warfare is ridiculous. America granted amnesty to these doctors and scientists for all the research they have gathered, covering up any evidence of human experimentation. Many court cases actually happened where the government was like, "We don't know anything about these human experiments. You never did any human experiments. What are you talking about?" It's like, I was part of Unit 731. I did some experiments. We used chemical warfare. We were actually planning to bomb you guys. He goes, "No, you didn't. That's what you're going to say. That's your story. You didn't do anything like that. We're giving you amnesty." So let's talk about some of the experiments. This is what all led up to Operation Cherry Blossom, what they put in these little missile things. A man was given a vivisection by infamous 731 units, and this helped seeing the disease affecting the person's organs. So injecting people with anthrax and doing all this stuff, they would literally watch it in this person's organs.
Jesus.
A Russian mother and daughter were left in a gas chamber as scientists basically peered through thick glass, watching their convulsions. Photos were taken of the mother's futile attempt to protect her child from the gas by sprawling on top of her. You know, that's a motherly instinct thing. But infecting them with a gas, like using the biological weapons, deciding if you want to put it in parasites or you want to put it in bugs or you want to do it airborne, that's ridiculous. And then testing people and watching it happen, like you got to think that wasn't just a mom and a daughter. There's probably countless of people that were walking in there not knowing what they were doing, much like the gas chambers that Hitler used. So infected subjects would be placed with healthy ones in an attempt to see how an infection would spread. They're doing this infection in their own camp. How risky is that?
Dog.
Victims were usually taken to a proving ground called Anda, where they were tied to stakes and tested on with plague weapons. So all their test weapons that they would use, they'd like tie someone to a pole, walk out into like a gun firing range, and that person would be tied at the end, and then they just sit there and infect them and do whatever they have to do to watch this stuff happen. And actually, at one point, there was a bunch of scientists that were set a bunch of guys out in like a field test, like how you would to watch a nuke. And this is the bomb that they actually developed for the cherry blossom night thing. They released this toxic gas that was going to be placed in that bomb, and the wind changed. So all the scientists didn't even get to see the results. They had to run for their lives because they would have been infected too. So we're talking about natural events causing big disturbances and problems. Like we've seen that with the cockle shell heroes,
Yeah.
with the weather messing up their canoe trip and stuff and blowing them completely off course and wrecking a couple of those canoes. Well, during the infection of cholera in thypoid cultures in wells and ponds, 1,700 of Japanese soldiers died in a counterproductive moment. Because they were infecting the city's wells, they were infecting all these towns' wells, ponds, all this stuff. And then someone didn't tell a bunch of the troops. Next thing you know, they're all drinking the water and they're down the road, shitting their brains out. It's crazy to think that it's just a bunch of little mistakes and little like sidebars that really kind of halted this giant event from happening. Because if they would have bombed us, or if they wouldn't have surrendered a couple days earlier, we might be living in a whole new America, man. We talk about make America great again with Trump. We might be making America great again with Pyongyang Qingfao.
I just hope to fucking God anything.
The fates.
The fates that we just figure out that war only leads to this kind of thing, just stupid fuck ups, bad decisions, stupid experiments, loss of pointless, ridiculous loss of life,
But do you think America's bad for giving these people amnesty just because we needed their research? Much like Operation Paperclip, we just used their research and gave them complete, we just totally forgot for all their crimes.
I don't know, man. It's such a gray area because there's a reason why the I was just following orders kind of thing is so unanimous. It's human nature to just the higher up said I can do it and I'm supposed to do it and it's a good thing to do it.
That's the same thing with the milligram experiment, how people work under authority. They gave I talked about this with Chris. They gave people 21 nurses a certain drug that was a lethal dose to kill a patient, and they were told by their superior to give it to their patient. It's going to, this is what's going to happen. They knew it was a lethal dose. 20 of them did it. One did not. One did the moral right thing, I'm not going to kill this person. I refuse. You can kill me, whatever.
When you work on that base, it's just in the human condition to follow those orders. It's built in. Is it worse to just condemn the average human for following that kind of thing, or is it better to take them and be this is what you did wrong, you shouldn't be acting like this? It's not an excuse to say that I was just following orders. However, that is the average human thing to do. So here's another chance.
Well, there's two ways people can be blinded by it. One is, someone threatening your family, feeling like your family's going to be in danger. You're at this camp with all these guys that are following blindly. They're willing to kamikaze themselves.
Yeah.
They're willing to kill themselves. And that's how they actually gave them, speed and meth and stuff just to be able to crash that plane into the thing. They knew they were going to die, but it's having that type of, robotic, being able to follow orders makes them one of the most craziest military out there.
Nazis and
we talk about laying
the
your
Nazis
life on
had
the country,
their
man.
Yeah, they all had their own brand of their own flavor of nationalism. You know, like
Well, this was Japan I'm talking about.
I know,
They
like
were down to kamikaze.
Japan has their own like kamikaze like honor. Like it's all based on like family honor. You know, that kind of thing. Like if they were ordered to do this for their country and then they couldn't, then like that's the highest dishonor. They might as well be dead. So
Better fall on that sword. Well,
that is exactly
what they did too. Yeah.
like that kind of mindset. Like I dishonored myself. I'll
Blind
throw
allegiance,
myself with
man.
my own sword.
That's what we talk about. Like where people might seem brainwashed. It's just like to think that
there's thousands of different flavors.
To think that you're willing to bring back a plague to bomb your enemy is just ridiculous. And thank God it didn't go through and it was canceled on August 15th, 1945 with the Japanese surrender. Because if it would have been planned for the 22nd of September, you know, that's not too long down the road. We would have been in a...
I'm happy that's not a part of our history.
Would have been in a plague storm, bro. Well, anybody that wants to look up Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night, it's definitely a good read. And also look up Unit 731 if you want to know about Mr. Shirō Ishii, a man that started the program and is probably one of the most dangerous people out there. Was one of the most dangerous people out there. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Fill in the Blank. And Evan, what's your takeaway from this?
Arigato.
Mr. Roboto.